One. Proud to be a part of the Starborn Support Network and Experiencer Speak. She is also a MUFON National Abduction Research Team, or ART, member, working under Kathleen Martin, as well as a Florida MUFON Field Investigator and STAR Team member. A former Florida MUFON State Section Director and Chief Investigator, Denise co-authored and published her first book, The Alien Abduction Files, which I highly recommend. It was released in May of 2003 and co-authored by the extraordinary Kathleen Martin. Denise also holds educational forums for public and private gatherings for abduction experiencers, and her involvement in the UFO field spans more than 25 years. She has an educational background in business and psychology, and is a certified hypnotist specializing in regressive hypnosis. She has taught classes in stress reduction for 12 plus years for professionals in such fields as medicine and law. Denise Stoner began her research in hypnosis under Dr. Bob Romack of Denver, Colorado, and worked together with him for 5 years on pain control and smoking cessation and past life regression research. Denise has also worked as a paranormal investigator in the homes of abductees who felt they had been visited by spirits following abductions. She recorded evidence of the development of psychic abilities in individuals following their experiences with UFOs and ETs, and worked on a team with Dr. Romack, studying abductees' abilities to locate missing people and predict future events. For 12 years, Denise did background investigations for the military on recruits seeking highly classified clearances for work on nuclear submarines. Prior to retirement, she moved to the Naval Air Warfare Center, Training Systems Division, Military Research Branch, where she was a training coordinator for several hundred military and civilian employees. A retired scuba instructor, cave diver, and former research member of the National Speleological, that can't be pronounced right, Society Cave Diving Section. Her retirement from the federal government has allowed her to expand her work with UFO research and investigation. Denise has appeared on TV, include the Travel Channel, PBS, Weird Florida with Charles Carlson, over 100 radio shows in 2012, and speaks yearly at the Daytona Museum of Arts and Science, as well as other venues. She has worked as an on-camera expert for documentaries produced in the UK, and is currently moving forward with some exciting new projects, such as her research on the commonalities among abductees, which is now in its second study. Her hypnotist certification came through hypnosis and regression training at the Hypnotic Research Society by Dr. Ronald P. DeVosco, Advanced Regression Study through the National Guild of Hypnotists Incorporated by Donald J. Martin. She was invited and accepted, becoming a part of the newly formed Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, or FREE, as a member of the research team, and can be contacted through her website at www.denisestoner.com. It is a privilege to produce my good friend and beloved colleague, Denise Stoner.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to beat what Kathy did. That was so amazing, wasn't it? It was just fantastic. So I feel a little bit compelled to mention how Kathleen and I met, because it's pretty interesting also. We did not meet until just a few years ago, maybe 4 now, and she came to one of my meetings. She just showed up, and I recognized that face when she walked through the door. I was holding a MUFON meeting in Orlando, Florida, and afterwards she came up to speak to me, and we began to talk, and I thought, well, I think I'm going to invite that gal for lunch. And she came over to my home, and we began to talk privately. And we began to mention where we had been, where we lived. I was born in Connecticut. And then I said that I had lived in a little town for a short time, twice in my life, Gunnison, Colorado. And I saw her startled and look, and she said, "What was the name of that town?" And when I told her, she said, "Well, those years I happened to live in Crested Butte. It was just down the road, and it was a dead-end town in the winter. And when it wasn't wintertime, you had to go over a very precarious pass in order to reach civilization. Tiny little towns with barely any crossroads, except there was a college where I lived, and that's where my husband was attending school, just out of the army. He had been in Vietnam, and we wanted to get away from everything. Well, it just so happened that one day in broad daylight, when everybody was getting back from school, I was babysitting kids. We all took turns, and there came a craft in broad daylight. Bright, kind of gold, brushed gold. It was changing colors. You could see the portholes. It was kind of dancing over the foothills right between Crested Butte and Gunnison. Well, we found out that we probably both saw the same craft on the same day, and neither of us knew the other. So that's how we met, became friends. She is my mentor. She has walked me through my experiences that had been lost. They had all been taped and recorded for years, and Dr. Romack passed away before I could get any of my information from him, and it had slowly left my memory. So I'm going to go over a little bit of that and some things that are new, and also some things that you can help with for us and those of us that are investigators. I've written some of it down because I can't possibly tell you correctly without going over a little bit of my notes. And hopefully this won't take too long, but give you some very good information, something that will help you. There are some things that you may not know about that we've come across in our research. And so let's see if we can begin. Are abductions real, and who said so? Well, we all said so, didn't we? All of us that are abductees, we know so. Of course, we just heard about the Betty and Barney Hill case. We heard that in depth, and we need to think about that and how things were researched and how they were investigated. This is very important. We saw some of the physical evidence. We heard about the shoes. We heard about the marks on the car and the watches that didn't work. So think about that when it comes to yourself. That's very, very important. And I'm going to give you some more information that you can add to this. Terry Ling is the Assistant State Director for the state of Florida. I have worked with her, and so hasn't Kathy. She came to us to find out what had gone on with her, what is going on with her. She has continuous memory of something that happened with her years ago. She pulled up to a railroad track on her way home. And at the time it was dark. I'm showing you this in daylight so you can see what happened. And when she did, began to pull up to that track, there was a huge craft right over the railroad track. She could see the windows, she could see the shining craft. Even though her mind told her not to get out of the car, she did. She got out and walked up to it. She looked it over, and she did see an entity. We had to help her with some hypnosis in order to bring forth some of the memories, because she was so startled and so close that you tend to block some of what you have, not only out of fear, but possibly because of what the entities do to you. My experience. The Travel Channel came out and filmed my experience. I'm going to show you two-minute films. They did an excellent job. Very, very good job. Kathy was there. She acted as a consultant. She should have been a part of the film. But you know how filmmakers are, and sometimes they don't do what they should. But she acted as a consultant. She would have spoken up if she thought anything had gone wrong.
It's a hot August afternoon, and Denise and Ed Stoner are gearing up for a weekend getaway at the family ranch.
We lived just outside of Denver, and we would travel up into the mountains to a town called Buena Vista. We would come up there every weekend in the summer. It was a tradition.
At 5 p.m., the couple is ready to hit the road. Ed sets the odometer to 0, just as he does every trip.
We always use the same roads. I take Highway 285 up through South Park, through Buena Vista, and up to camp.
By 6:30 p.m., they reach the top of Kenosha Pass, a 10,000-foot path that cuts through the mountains.
I looked out across the valley floor. Sky was clear, not a cloud in the sky.
Just then, two strange lights appear on the horizon.
What is that? They were coming across the valley floor towards us. I wasn't sure if it was a plane or what it was because the lights were so bright.
I've never seen a plane like that. Ed!
I was a little bit frightened, and the more I watched them and the closer they got and looked over at Ed and he appeared to be in a daze, the more frightened I was.
What started out as a typical vacation is about to end with a terrifying trip into the unknown.
Okay, the second part is going to show a little bit about the inside of the craft. It's actually a little fancier than what it was, but still, it's pretty close to what happened.
August 1982. On a Colorado highway, Ed and Denise Stoner's weekend getaway has turned into a bizarre experience. Two blinding lights appear in the sky above them.
These lights were coming very steadily and fairly quickly towards us.
Ed, slow down, slow down!
When that happened, I just blanked out.
Denise and Ed's next memory is driving along the road in the dark, and 3 hours have somehow passed in an instant. They also realize they're now on Trout Creek Pass, a road on the other side of the valley, more than 40 miles away.
We both felt very odd, like we had been interfered with. Something was very wrong. My head felt funny.
Pull over.
The odometer, we should have at least 40 more miles on this.
I remember looking at my odometer right after I passed the city. It was 74 miles. My God, it still says 74 miles, and I'm 40 miles down the road up on Trout Creek Pass.
This does not feel right at all.
I began to question everything. I thought, is this a UFO?
Stupid, but do you think that could have been like a UFO? Like that could...
We were both confused, and we were both anxious. So we said, let's just head for the range.
Denise begins to obsess over how they lost 3 hours of time on the road that night. But it's not until years later that she decides to see a renowned UFO researcher who specializes in alien abductions.
That's
And
Kathy.
take a deep breath.
Denise is put under regressive hypnosis to recover her memory.
She took me back to that point, and I saw the craft. And under hypnosis, I drew the craft, which looked like 2 dishes, upside down, inverted, with a ring in the center filled with lights. I was taken out of the car by 2 entities. And I was taken into the craft, and inside a hallway, I remember the entities and was very frightened. I saw no emotions whatsoever, not anger, not fear. They weren't questioning anything.
Once inside the craft, she's confronted by one of the alien creatures.
He was speaking, but not with his mouth. Maybe it was a form of telepathy because I heard everything.
This actual recording from Denise's hypnosis session reveals what the aliens have in mind.
He was going to have to prepare me for the future. He had a wire, it looked like a wire. It will keep track of me.
The alien inserts a tracking device into her foot.
I try to kick him. I can't move. It is painful. Make me scream.
I realized that I didn't have control of the situation. I wondered if I was going to be taken back, and I had to just allow whatever was going to happen, not fight it. They took me off this metal bed, stood me up. The entity said, "We're taking you back now." I have no idea how I arrived, but I was back in the car and we were sitting on Trout Creek Pass.
Since the abduction, Denise has dedicated herself to UFO research and helping others who have been abducted.
The experience has changed my life and has made me want to move forward and continue to research and continue to look for answers, and I'm going to keep looking for those answers. There's the pass, right here where it says rest area. We always stopped there and got out for about 5 minutes because the trip from Denver took us almost 3 hours. We took the highway down and twisted and turned all the way through the little town of Jefferson. About 4 miles outside of Jefferson is where we were taken. It was daylight. The sun was still shining because we wanted to make it over to the mountain pass before dark. And my parents were waiting for us on the other side. They were ready to call the cops, to call the hospitals, and the only road where we were going was that twisted road right there, and we were aiming for the mountains on the other side. So that's a little bit about my story. I have memories from age 2.5 up until today. Now I'm going to show you a couple of slides on some of my cases. A woman that I'm working with, and you might want to take notes if you haven't noticed anything like this going on with you. We've talked about triangles, marks on your body. This is something that I had not seen before, and I'm watching for people to report to us that have more. This is a woman and 2 daughters. She woke up and had some strange dreams of opening her eyes and seeing an entity at the foot of her bed. She had seen crafts, she'd seen strange lights in her room, and her mouth hurt. So she opened her mouth. This is what I'm going to be talking about. Pretty interesting cases. And she had a puncture wound, perfectly round. She went to the dentist and it went right down through her gum. They couldn't find anything in there. The dentist couldn't tell her what it was or where it came from. She had photographed it before she went to the dentist. It did heal up pretty quickly, but she's a smart woman, and she told herself, I better check my daughters. Ran to their rooms and said, we have a dentist appointment. She didn't want to frighten them. How about if we take some pictures for the dentist before we go? So they were quite willing, and this might not be real clear, but right there is an identical hole. It actually went down through the cheek and into the gum from the backside, an identical hole to hers. And they said, but Mom, there were some people in our room last night. And she asked them to describe, and they described what would have been some little grays. So I'm working on that, and we're going to see what comes of it. She's had some other marks. She's had the triangles. They both, her and her older daughter, have the triangular marks between the index finger and the thumb. So that's something new for them. And now I've also spoken to a couple of men, this is just one, who awoke in his garage, and he's not a sleepwalker. He woke in his garage, felt abdominal pain, put his hand down to reach, and when he pulled it back, his hand was filled with a clear fluid, and some blood came from his navel. So he started to check and got up and discovered that his head also hurt. He has a wide cut in the top of his head. He's had that happen more than once. I just brought the one photo. I have also had this happen to the other gentleman. Why this is, we don't know. There's no implant, just the perfect wide cut. He's waking up in places that he shouldn't be. He has memories of Greys coming to escort him from his home to a ship hovering just above the yard, waiting to take him somewhere. He's having difficulty recalling because he's so afraid. I'm just going to click to the helix while I speak. I have no pictures of this, but I'm working with two identical twins in New York City. They both awakened not too long ago, about 2 months ago, to discover that they had the marks on their hands between index and thumb, quite large, and they said they feel as if they've been branded of the triangles. And I had a conference call with them, and they both speak as twins do, very rapidly, and they say the same thing at the same time, and I was able to record some of it recently, and it's all about the Greys and what they look like and the size and the shape, and that they were taken. They have conscious memories, and they had not shared the last conversation except until the time they did with me. So how can they do that? Of course, we know that twins can have some telepathic abilities, but this is just too unusual, and they don't live that closely together. They have their own homes, several miles apart. So I'm finding this case very, very interesting. What do we consider evidence? We have to compile something to help us begin to figure this thing out. We can't any longer just go haphazardly all over the place. So we've tried to compile some things to help us, the investigators. We need some conscious, continuous memories. And how do we do that? We need some waking memory of being in a craft or of seeing a craft. What does it look like inside? What happened to some degree? Some parts and pieces of this while you're awake. Try to bring that forward, and I'll give you some ideas of how to do that. The sighting of a craft, like I just said. Other witnesses. Talk to people if you can, if you're brave enough. Go to a neighbor. See if they can report that you weren't home when you should be, that they sighted some crafts or odd lights in the sky within 2 to 3 days either side of what might have happened to you. That's really important. Do that for yourself. Journal it. It has to do also with missing time. Were you gone and somebody couldn't find you? Did they question it and you didn't? Check that out. Did you look at the clock and you just dismissed it? Did you set your coffee pot for a certain time in the morning and something was wrong with that? Does time feel confused? Did you get somewhere too quickly? We might all know this, but we don't do anything about it. I'm going to go over some of the other important evidence that we don't think about. We know it, but we don't think about it. Nosebleeds, migraine headaches, discovery of odd patterned marks on the body. Doesn't have to be a triangle, but if you think it's odd, get something to us. Take a photograph. Tiny objects just under the skin that raise up when strong magnets are put over the top. If they actually raise it up, we want to know that. Try field or EMF meters. Up to 2 weeks can spike. They don't just work on ghost hunts. They work on human bodies. That's something that Kathleen and I discovered after I was taken leaving her home. UV black light phosphoresces on clothing and skin following an abduction. Powder or wet clothing. You wake up with that, I'll tell you what to do with it. Waking up with clothing on backwards, or clothing that does not belong to you. Wake up in another part of your home, or discover you are sitting in your car when you went to sleep in your home. You have no history of sleepwalking, or perhaps you do, but you can tell something just isn't right about this. Photographic and physical. That's really, really important. Don't get up and say you're going to take a picture and then 2 weeks down the road your evidence is gone. Get that camera out, get that cell phone out, and get those photographs for us. There are markers that we as investigators hold back. We're not going to tell you what they are, but we can help you if you send them to us. It's just like a crime scene. Only the perpetrator knows. Separate witnesses, once again. At times, others in the home or present with the witnesses realize that a person was missing and passed it off as some weird episode because they don't have any other answers and they can't mentally wrap their minds around it. They really can't, so they might not bring it up. They won't think this was possibly an abduction, so you don't bring it up either. You don't know if they can handle the truth. Bring it up. That's what we're talking about here today. It occurs more often than we realize. Ask the people that were sure were involved during an obvious episode, and there will be several experiences here. Some will realize they may have been put to sleep. My husband has said several times he feels like he's coming out of an anesthesia. That kind of dopey, not sure what's going on feeling, and he doesn't know why. He'll come and ask me now, were you taken last night? Do you remember anything? And a lot of the times I do. A neighbor once asked me, she was brave and came and said, why were you standing in the middle of the road last night under a big light beam? All she needed to do was look up and she would have seen the giant craft that just brought me back. And I was standing in my nightgown in the middle of the road and she knew it wasn't right. And she was a good friend of ours, but I think she was afraid to go any further than she did. And I was very careful in telling her a little something about it. So we're very cautious. And now, a little bit of humor, because what is not evidence? Not evidence. That's for fun. And someone drew these photos for me. Her name is Barbara Ward, and she is an abductee, but she needs to find the humor in some of what has happened to her because she lives alone. She's in her 70s, and she does this to alleviate the stress and the pain that she feels due to all of this that's happened to her. Here's another one. She told me a kind of a terrifying story the other day, but with it, she sends me this character. And she goes outside and she finds her cats are terrified of something at night. They're looking around, they're looking up in the sky, and she sees the lights. She sends me that story along with this guy. So you can find the humor in it. You can find a way to deal with what's going on. You can tell us as investigators. You can talk to friends. It's important that you do. What about dreams? We need a conscious memory to go with the dreams. And this is going to get a little different. We're going to switch from the owl routine because I've had a couple of people tell me some things that helped me deal with what occurred not too long ago to me. I always listen very carefully to a dream sequence to look for trauma and clues. And then I ask them, again, write down those dreams and do it quickly, because it's going to fade quickly. Although I must say that if some conscious memory is present and you begin to journal those dreams, it can open up a memory that is just under the surface. Gives us something to work with, a place to start. Writing and recalling this way is mildly hypnotic when a person is concentrating very deeply on a task. That is not really evidence. My neighbor did this for me, and I asked him to design a cat because people have dreams of some very strange things, and they'll try to say, uh-oh, something came for me, and this is what it was. You need to be very specific. You need to be very careful, because trauma can hide a face with big eyes. Yet conscious memory will, most of the time, allow you to know something about the figure. If you had a figure in your dream, do begin to draw it, because it might help you to shape it into what it really was. Go over the sequence. What you saw in your dream or while you were coming awake, was it floating or walking? How was it moving? Describe as you draw. You might discover that the dark figure in your dream had a face after all. So you do need to do that. And now I'm going to show you some photographs of a real orb that I took versus what is not. This was up near Area 51. We had driven for about 6 hours and not seen another vehicle. We have a friend, a relative actually, who's lived up in that area since he was in 6th grade. He knows how to find his way to places, in hidden places. Oops, that's me again on the table. All right, orbs. That gentleman, my relative, is 6'3.5". I'll give you an idea how tall that piece of rock is. I took that, I scuffled around in the dust, and I caused those dust orbs to happen. And you can see them in the back of the spire, in the front. That's probably the largest one I've ever photographed. You can also compare it to the 6'3.5" figure that was standing in front of it. When we left that area, where we were peeking over at Area 51 that night, I heard the sound, and not everybody will hear this, but I heard the sound of Rice Krispies. It sounded just like that. I couldn't describe it any other way. And it was behind my left shoulder. My husband was driving, we were heading back for the city, and I turned around and looked, and I saw what I will show you as a real orb, and it was following the car. And it came, there it is. That's a real orb. The light is contained inside it. It does not reflect outside. It was not shining on the road. The light on the road was from the vehicle we were in. It was about the size of a human head. They're all different sizes. And it followed us, came right up to the side of the driver's head, and continued to follow us until we could see the lights of the city. So I did not lift my camera until I had seen that and heard it with my own eyes. The side of the road is Joshua trees, sagebrush, and just very low cut. Nothing tall, no trees, but you can see the dust orbs around it. And as soon as we saw the lights of the city, that just shot off again down the road behind us and disappeared. What lies between? Sleep paralysis usually occurs when a person is right between sleep and waking. I'm sure the majority of you in the room knows this. His or her mind finds a person in the waking state, but we have not triggered the body to wake up. In abduction, we are aware and feel that paralysis setting in, so be aware of this. Paranormal or abduction. There is some evidence now that paranormal episodes affect a percentage of abductees. Those exact statistics are just being gathered. Also, mostly for a short period, some abductees appear to have more psychic ability, can predict future events, exhibiting impressive accuracy. These two fields could have more in common than believed previously. We have been aware for years that for several hours following their return, abductees pop lights and destroy such things as microwave ovens, hair dryers, and wristwatches. They can walk under street lights and turn them out and then turn them back on again. Mind games. This is very interesting. We've heard about the owls. Do these visitors with their advanced minds and technology erase our memories? Worse yet, implant little scenarios in order to confuse us. Hence, we each draw opposite conclusions regarding these experiences. They bring holographic images, images of familiar animals to entice us. Curious foxes, mysterious owls, large birds of prey who can fly alongside our vehicles or stand blocking the road. I had that happen to me. Huge bird, wouldn't move. It was very frightening. These all are to capture our curiosity when we are outdoors. However, what about us city dwellers? What about household pets? We're all inside, we're all in the city. What are they doing to us now? What's new? This just happened to me, and it's happened more than once. Household pets are new. They seem to know we are suckers for rescuing and loving our animals, especially little ones. Sit a helpless, tiny animal high on your chest. It gazes into your eyes until suddenly a paw, wait, that's not a paw, quickly pushes that paw up into your nose, and that baby kitten has changed into an entity with those huge gray eyes. Yikes, that's a gray. And I must give credit to Bill Burt, who is Elaine Douglas's artist, and she has passed on, so I thank him for doing that for me. But as this entity comes from behind, he gets larger, and you can see he has something in his hand. He's ready to actually push something up my nose. And I was awake, I was patting that kitten and looking at it, and this thing just transferred into what it was when it got too close for me to do anything about it. This is, I feel we have something to tell mankind. What is this all about? We all know that a lot of us have that feeling, and we can't get it out. We just can't recall. Please, all of you, remain proactive. Do that. Journal, take your pictures, help us to help you. It's very, very important. Journal, photos of the body, preserve the clothing, and I told you I would tell you how to do that. If you notice anything different about your clothing, please put it in a brown paper bag, roll that up, put it in the back of your closet, and no peeking for 2 weeks. If you open that bag and you see something that looks different from when you put it in there, call us. No touching. Okay, so that's what you do with things that you own that you need to back up like that. That's what you do. Okay. And in closing, abductions have proved to be generational. A single abduction can occur, however, these appear to be accidental. Wrong place at the wrong time, and there are some of those, but still report them. Working with generations of experiencers show common denominators of emotional trauma bred from anxiety for your family and for yourself, concern for the future of humankind, possible destruction of this oasis we live on, the pressure felt by hidden knowledge waiting to be unlocked. And now all feel a connection, all of us, one to the other, with anticipation of something coming. It is felt at the cell and the soul level by experiencers, us. Something involving every living thing, multitudes of people we know, and many more yet to be counted. These are all common factors. I am a part of it, and I must continue to search until we have an answer, like that answer or not. Thank you for your time.